Hello, so today I want to go over how we can modify and differentiate a graphic organizer when reading a story with our students. And we're going to focus in on the ELA essential element from the DLM RL 3.1, and that's to answer who and what questions to demonstrate understanding of details in a text. And one way we want our students to be able to recall the information from a text, oftentimes we need to utilize a graphic organizer or provide them with something visual. So I found a story on PBS Learning, and it's a Colombian folktale called Pastorcita. And this is a really cool folktale because it brings in our cultural responsive learning as well as being able for us to tie in perhaps something that our students already know, which is a common fairy tale that we've talked about or that they might have heard as they were younger, and it's compared to Little Bo Peep. So we have some options here to do some different things with this, but it's a really great video. It's only 2.5 minutes. It's animated and it goes through the whole story. So using Pastorcita, I wanted to use a graphic organizer. And one of the graphic organizers that I often use is this one right here, where it has our characters, our setting, our problem, and our solution. And if you look at this right now, it's pretty open-ended and might be really complicated for our students to be able to put any information into it, right? It's definitely a bit hard, it's challenging. There's not really many cues provided. So I'm going to break this story elements organizer down and show you ways that you can scaffold support for your students. And one of the ways I like to do that is, as you see, there are the 4 elements here. And as we're beginning a unit and beginning a new story, identifying all 4 story elements might be a bit challenging. So sometimes I like to focus on, either 1 or 2 of them. And one way I did that is right here. I broke down my story elements organizer into 2 story elements. And the way I did that, I will show you here, is I simply took a screenshot of the PDF. So you go into File, down to Screenshot, from Selection, and it allows you just to drag your mouse right over and take a screenshot, right? So you can just take a quick snapshot and it breaks it down to however many pieces that you want, right? So we did 2 here, and then I further broke it down. So what I also needed to do for my students in particular is I need to provide some visual supports and some cueing. So as you can see, I used the draw feature, which is right here. I clicked on it, and it allows you to draw lines. Whoop. And it can even straighten out your lines when you draw them a little funky with your mouse. So I like to use the draw feature to highlight what it is I want my students to focus on. And I use that with different colors, obviously, to cue them in as we're reading, as we're looking through things. I like to be able to have different colors so they can cue into what it is I'm asking them for. So using the draw feature, I highlighted each box. You can do this obviously on paper when you're in person, but virtually you can kind of use the same thing. And so you use that draw feature, you draw a box right around the 2 key elements that you're focusing on for your lesson. And for our essential element today, it's going to be the characters in this setting, right? The who and then where. So another thing I did was I added a little cue down here. So in addition to just the characters in the setting, I put down the questions that they're going to be asking to find out those elements. And you do that by clicking right up here with this little box with a T. That's a text box. And a text box will pop right up when you do it. And then you can type in any sort of questions or any sort of prompting that you might need, any sort of words that might cue the students into what they're looking for. So I typed in a when question because that often also helps us answer the setting. However, in Pastorcita, we only have a where. So this is one way that I broke down the 2 story elements. And I often start with 2 story elements when I'm working with my students because I feel that they can differentiate between 2, so then I know whether or not they're really getting it, right? Instead of just providing them with just characters, I give them the characters and the setting, and then I can kind of determine, do they really get what characters are? Do they really get what the setting is? But if your students aren't ready for that just yet, once again, you can just simply take that screenshot right up here from File, take Screenshot from Selection, and break it down even smaller, right? And you can just highlight that character, make sure we don't get any house, and click it, and there you go. You have your modified characters right here with your highlight, your who. You have a big open space, so if your students want to draw in who the character is, they can do that. If they need to put their icons there, they can do that as well. So that's one way you can scaffold the support and break it down a little further for your students. But I'm also going to show you some different ways to increase the rigor as you're going through. And this is also something that you can utilize as you start moving through the unit and you think that your students can start handling being able to identify more than just 1 or 2 story elements. Maybe they can move on now to the 3 and the 4. So something I did here was I provided some lines. I still have my who question to cue them in, my prompt, my where over here. And in Pastorcita, we have the little shepherd who's one character and the sheep. So I can again make a line, and this helps my students be able to write on the line. Sometimes if I give them a wide open space, it could look a little crazy. So I provide some lines for some support, or I can provide just the numbers over here if I want them just to put in icons, or they can place the icons on the lines. So one thing you can do to make a line, you go right here to your shapes box, you go right down, click on the arrow, you'll see the line here, you click on it, and a line will pop right up, right? So you can move this line wherever you need it to go. The other thing that's really nice is, once again, if we're sticking with our color coding as our visual support, we can very simply just change the color of that line, right? So that we know as we're going through, if we're using any sort of book that we're modifying or adapting and we want to stick with our colors, or we're providing students with icons or with their AAC device, if they can have a border around the icon, we will stick with the same color so that, again, supports their responding. So we can change that. This was green, so we can change that to green. So you can make the lines pretty much anything to support that visual cueing and prompting. So that's one way I like to even increase the rigor. And again, you can use this towards the end of your lesson. So, you can see how your students progress potentially from just identifying your characters. You can move on to now let's work on characters and setting. And then towards the end, we went through the story a few times. Let's get the characters, setting, problem, and solution. And again, you can work through color coding, highlighting, using your draw feature, your line feature, your text box. Now, with Pastorcita, it's just an audio video, right? So sometimes it can move a little fast for our students. And something I like to support them with is I will go into Boardmaker and I will write out the words. So I make my own adapted book for them. This is something, if it supports your students, it's great for, you can utilize it. If it doesn't and they're better with the videos and you stop along the video and have them fill it out or draw in the picture with their icons, that's great. But something that works a lot for my students is having this extra adapted book in front of them. So we might watch the video, then read through the book in groups, right, in their buddy groups. So something you can do when you have your board maker, you save it as a PDF, which is what we did here, and you can just highlight here all different colors, right? So if there was something specific that you wanted them to hone in on, which we wanted to hone in on characters, we stuck with the yellow, and then you can just click on the word, double click it, and it'll highlight the word to be whatever color you need. So you'll see here we have the little shepherd and we have our sheep. Those are the only 2 characters in our story, but we do have a setting. So as you see here, here's our little shepherd. We have everything already with our yellow. And here, could find another one, click that yellow. And then we have our setting, which is on a mountain and a slope. So I highlighted that green. So you would just go right up here, change that color. You'll see it's already set to green. So that's some ways that I also cue my students into that color coding as they're reading. So when they go back for their graphic organizers, they're able to know exactly what it is I'm asking them for. Now, as I said, Pastorcita is very similar to the classic fairy tale, Little Bo Peep. So one thing you can do towards the end of your story, if you wanted to extend this activity even further, you can start creating Venn diagrams. So you can make a very basic one right here. What are some of the things that are just about Pastorcita, just about Little Bo Peep, and what's the same? You can find one that looks a little fancier, has some different line colors there, and you can just simply type in Pastorcita, Little Bo Peep, and then you can have your students compare and contrast if they're ready for that. You can utilize icons on a Venn diagram, right? Again, with the color coding, making them different colors. You can have them write out their answers, type in their answers, things that are different, things that are the same, and then you can extend it even further so they really start to understand and demonstrate their understanding of what the details in a text are. So I hope this was helpful. I hope this gave you some ideas on how to modify something to take something that's pretty wide open and break it down to make it useful for your students.